Coming up is a webinar produced by the Detroit Area Agency on Aging to kick off our 40th anniversary year. Over the next hour or so, you will find out how aging, while Black, has directed the careers of many African Americans in gerontology.
You'll also meet some of the most committed and passionate servant leaders in the Aging Network, all of them committed to a future where more people of color are at the table to help shape aging policies in our country. These leaders include Ronald Taylor, President and CEO, Detroit Area Agency on Aging; Purcell Stanford, a leading researcher, scholar, and authority on public policy and the first African American to receive a PhD in gerontology; Dolores Penn, the first director of the National Caucus and Center on Black Aging, a position that followed her work in racial justice for the National YWCA; Billy Johnson, President and CEO, Area Office on Aging of Northwestern Ohio, a mentor to many and focused on quality housing for older adults throughout their lives; Aisha C. Young, founder of African Americans in Gerontology, reaching younger people via digital media to consider careers in aging; and Paul Bridgewater, retired President and CEO, Detroit Area Agency on Aging. His 38 years with our agency are a testament to how we make history every day in service to other people. Coming up, we'll look back and we'll look forward with these Black history makers.
I'd just like to say I'm very excited about today's conversation and today's panel and everyone coming together and just having this conversation in regards to just honoring our legacy and also embracing our future. And just to be with this group of individuals is quite an honor. But I am excited and want to hear from the panel and hear from the guests that we have. And so we're going to have plenty of time to talk about our future. But what I like to do is kind of just turn it over and to hear from someone everyone pretty much knows. And that is my predecessor and the well-known Paul Bridgewater. Paul, what have you been doing in your retirement?
Yeah, it's amazing that, and really thank you for putting this together. I think when you've put together such a wonderful panel of individuals who have really contributed to the expansion of aging as it relates to inclusion of minority, specifically Black population, I think this year is a fitting time to got to do that. In retirement, it certainly was a major adjustment in the sense of working almost 52 hours a day. But it has been an adjustment. I'm doing well. I'm enjoying my time. One of the biggest challenges was my wife. Today she come home and asked what I had done today, and I said nothing. And after a couple of weeks, she said, "Well, what are you going to do today?" I said, "Well, I'm going to work on those things I've been working on for the last couple of weeks, try to get those things done."
I sincerely want to thank you for asking me to be a part of this panel. I've enjoyed a wonderful, wonderful career in the field of aging. And I decided to look in my files, and I see the original letters from Jacqueline Jackson and Hobart Jackson to start the caucus and center on the Black aging in Washington, D.C. And I have all those papers. So I think we need to really pull our resources together and produce a document, if we can, that would tell about the history of the Black aged and our national caucus. I think it'll be wonderful. And I'd like to thank Paul Bridgewater for inviting me to participate in this panel. And I have fond memories when he asked me to give him a recommendation to join the Area Agency on Aging when I was then serving as the executive director of the National Caucus and Center on the Black Age. So Paul and I enjoyed a friendship for many years.
I have a great connection with so many of these individuals. It is a reunion today, and proud to be a part of it. Thank you, Ron and Paul, for thinking of this idea. But I remember Dolores Penn, when she was the CEO of the National Caucus and Center on Black Aging. She inspired me. I was still a young woman, but she inspired me in so many ways. I wanted to grow up and be like her. I watched her. She was so articulate. She had vision. She had leadership. And Hobart Jackson was one of my other mentors. And so watching him and then watching Purcell Stanford at every national conference, I mean, he would give us so many ideas with his research, his documentation. I admired him. Dolores, I admired her so much. I was still too shy in my early years. So I doubt that I told her any of this, but I knew she was interested in housing and she was interested in so many other areas. But I want to tell her today that from that inspiration that you gave me early in my career, and it would have been in the early, probably 80s, late 70s, early 80s.
Right.
I went on to develop 3 apartment complexes. I am working on a 46-acre campus, which is a continuum care campus. It's very much like a CCRC. And I brought in a lot of individuals to help me with that. I've passed 6 senior services levies, property tax levies, to try to diversify our funding base so that I wouldn't be totally reliant upon federal and state funding. And I've managed 3 managed care contracts. I started out when I first knew you with a staff of about 6 people and a budget of about $200,000 a year. And now we've grown to well over 180 people with $35 million budget. I mean, and those 3.
Congratulations.
But that started from you. And that's so important to mentor young people. And sometimes we don't even know we're mentoring them. They're watching and their role, and we are role models to them. So I've tried to do what you did for me. I've encouraged a lot of people in the field of aging. I've opened up doors. I mentor young women and young men. We have not bothered to document our legacy and our history. And I think, Ms. Dolores, you are right on the money. We need to do that because people like Dr. Stanford, Arthur Fleming was one of the ones that I met early on through J. Hobart Jackson, Gorham Black, Eugene Callender, Aaron Henry, those are and Larry Creasy, can't forget him. But
Sam Simmons.
And Sam for sure. Carol and Tom Jones. I mean, those were the Valerie Conley. Those were the original, the first line African Americans who moved into this field, and hopefully we opened a lot of doors for others.
I think it's important to mention just very briefly that Jacqueline Jackson was really the first Black professional and academic researcher to really get Black aging, minority aging, ethno-aging on the map. And when she started out in the, early 60s, Duke University, Jackson State University, all in Howard and Duke, so forth, she set the standard for doing what I call creditable work in the field. And in her work in ethno-aging, she was clear that we had to have statistics, we had to have reference material. So from that, my interest grew in terms of not only looking just at Black aging, but how do we look at aging of minorities across the board so that the common denominators that we share can strengthen what we all do. So in some of the work that we did at San Diego State, we were looking at, what were some of the things at the community level that made a difference in how we served older people. And we brought in people from all the different ethnic and minority communities.
And that is so true. Jacqueline was a real professional in the sense of academics, but I know the second year that I was director, I brought her into Detroit to kind of share her research and some of the items that she thought were very relevant that was not being addressed in the public arena. She was the one that identified the most at-risk person in this society is Black female because of the economic status, the ability of not getting jobs or pensions. They live longer than males and they live in poverty most of their lives. So when I was able to get that information, when we talked about public policy in the state of Michigan, I had some ammunition to go to the table to advocate more monies and more resources for minorities and specifically Black women. And Dolores, one of the key that me and Billy really treasured, that we were able to go to Washington, D.C. with NCAA or state conference or national conference based on the work that was being done at NCAA that helped us articulate opposition when we went back to our communities. So both research, political action groups certainly helped us to do our job out there in the trenches. We looked at some of our leaders and advocates have passed on. And that's the challenge, is grooming and develop new leaders in the research areas, in the advocacy areas, in the areas of public service, and getting people to understand as they assume these positions, they just didn't arrive and now they're going to change the world. It was a lot of work done before they've gotten here. I remember we in Michigan created a African American geriatric network, whereas as we talked about, University of Michigan, the School of Gerontology, Jacqueline Jackson, the Taylors, our providers that were working in the field to provide an education of what is the knowledge space, what are some of the trends, being able to educate, discuss, and really as for example, Ron, we talk about ourselves to identify those potential individuals that can go into academic areas and do the research, provide information, so it filtered back to us so that we can better do our jobs. And again, that's what NCBA meant to me, because that didn't take place in Michigan. I had to go to the national platform. And Dolores, you might mention that in 1971 White House Conference on Aging, Hobart Jackson and others boycotted because they felt that there was not enough inclusion of Blacks in administration and programs or participation of minorities. So special language was created that really focused on the most at-risk population, but those specifically of minorities, and gave us an assurance that we had some ammunition or background to ensure that when we went to the table and negotiated funding formulas or dollars, that we had the knowledge base. And Dr. Stanford, that's why I at one time, I poo-pooed on academic folks, but then I realized, they were the brain trust. And Dr. Stanford, you could get in rooms that I never could. So again, I give you a lot of accolades for opening a lot of doors for us when we were out there in the fields.
Purcell, I'd like to turn to you about how you even got your first introduction into the field of aging.
Well, that started, gosh, in 1959, 60, when I was at Morgan State University. We had a professor by the name of Dr. Earl Moses, who was a demographer. And he talked a lot about the aging population and what that population would mean in the future. And as a sociology major, I started thinking about, well, that's going to be around a while. What's going to give me some kind of security in the field? And it turned out that he was one of the persons that was responsible for planning for one of the panels for the White House Conference on Aging in 1961. And he asked some of us if we would be interested in helping to gather some data for the conference. So that was my very first introduction to aging. And it just sort of grew from there. My early intention was to continue in the ministry. And something happened along the way. I ended up in the Army and spent a few years in the Army. And when I got out of the Army, they went into the reserves. I went to graduate school, and in 1965, the National Institute of Child Health and Human Development gave out the first research fellowships for aging. And I was one of the 6 persons across the country, in the Midwest particularly, that got one of those fellowships to get our doctorates in aging. And I stayed in the program and was the first person from that group to graduate with a PhD in aging around the country.
It's definitely a blessing to be a part of this panel. So thank you very much for having me. I think the person who I actually have the most relationship with, even though he might not remember me, is Purcell Stanford. And I was introduced to him right when I was getting African Americans in Gerontology started about 10 years ago. And we've lost touch. So it is awesome to be reunited with him on this panel. But yes, gerontology, the field of gerontology is so important, and especially as African Americans who are aging. And so
We now come up to COVID-19, and we're finding out that the health disparities that we've been trying to address are multiplied now by the impact of this disease. Where do you see us going forward in terms of our commitment as African Americans in gerontology for really addressing issues that are very close to us?
So I'll take a stab at that and link that back to what Paul was just saying. With everything that's going on today, we still need to have people who are in some of those rooms, in some of those seats around those conference tables, not only in those seats, but with voices that make a difference. Because what's happening now, we have more people of color, more Black people in Congress, but there seems to be, the racism is still there. So we need to be thinking about more strategic ways of getting people in those rooms, in those seats, so that the policy aspect can be put on the table and can be heard and move through the policy channels at all levels, not just at the congressional level.
Yeah, I think it's critical, especially when we're talking about addressing some of these social determinants of health, and they're talking about the issues where you could tell the outcomes of a person's life based upon their zip code, and the fact that we see the direct issues or the direct impact on the lives of the individuals in which we serve. But it's a realization that the issues in which we're addressing are so much broader and so much greater than just the aging network. So we have to serve as the tip of the spear to bring in those industries and those entities such as education, to continue to work with municipalities, work with the business community. Just work also when you take a look as far as utilities and just all those various impacts that can influence or impact someone's life. So I think it's our role is expanding and is related to being a collaborator and being that unifier to continue to advocate, but also to bring these respective or to raise the awareness amongst these our respective industries and peers in our communities.
You know, we did a study, Dying Before Their Time, and that study was done 3 decades ago. And what we're able to show is discussion now about this chronic illness. We've got data as it relates to aging and Black aging that these conditions has been around. It's nothing new. And now we now see it's a hot topic. It's something that everybody wants to address. But I think Dr. Stanford really talked about getting in the right room and getting the right people to be able to raise that discussion and says, well, if this has been around 30 years, what have we done about it? What can we do about it? One of my colleagues here in Michigan said, Paul, you need to look at how did you get upstream to prevent seniors dying before their time. You need to look at policymakers, but now the door is open. That is some open discussions about how do we address the issues that we find Black people in as it relates to healthcare. And as I have heard Congressman Clyburn say that in the movement in the 60s, it got hijacked. And the question is that there's attention that's being paid now, but we've got to move quickly to be able to get some results because again, what's hot today might not be hot tomorrow.
So I just like to piggyback on what Paul just said and what others have said. As it pertains to COVID-19, our folk are dying 2 to 3 times more than their white counterparts. And I'm very disturbed about what is happening and how much we are being able to see the inequities in healthcare. It bubbled up tremendously during COVID-19. We realized that Black seniors, Black elders were not being served, and the social determinants of health just kind of bypassed them. People didn't realize that our healthcare system didn't realize that the social standing and status of individuals has a direct relationship on their health status. And so when COVID hit, we have seen a lot of our older adults who are African American and who are older adults of color die. And we still aren't doing enough about that. We're making great attempts, but as Dr. Stanford said, we have to be at the table and we have to change policy. We have to change attitudes. I've been in the field of aging for 47 years, and Paul Bridgewater is like my brother, my little brother, and we have helped each other in so many ways. I'll elaborate more, but I don't want to dominate and take up so much time. But Ron Taylor was like an assistant director to me. I've known Ron for over 30 years. I was grooming him to be my replacement, but he ended up going to Florida to the state unit on aging. And he and I had a long conversation about that. And, I encouraged him to do that because I wanted him to have the breadth of experience. He's quite a leader, quite an innovator. Both Paul and Ron have helped me in so many ways. I've been a mentor to Ron. I've watched my mentee end up mentoring me and sharing some of his great ideas for the future with me. And so I just feel so, I'm so anxious about what the future might look like. But when I look at Aisha and Ron, I know we're in good hands.
And one thing I will say in regards to that is that I couldn't have been more fortunate to walk into an organization that had the foundation in which it had, to have such a strong program, but then also a strong presence in the communities. And it's kind of made it difficult. But I've been very fortunate in regards to the fact that one, I received my foundation, my training from Mrs. Johnson, and I've also had the opportunity to walk with Paul, and he's walked with me, and continue to share and to make certain that I didn't step in any landmines. So to share the history of this DAAA, I'd like to turn it over to Paul Bridger.
What reflecting, and now that I'm retired, I get a lot of opportunity to look at the challenges that we have faced, and being able to address those challenges and really make lives better for the seniors that we serve. I was in Jackson, Mississippi, with NCB and a dear friend, Anna Brown, who was from Cleveland, Ohio. And that was the last time that we saw Anna, and Anna was one of the first African American president at NCOA, which was something that she accomplished and was able to provide leadership to aging across the country. But Anna shared with me back in the day that, Paul, whatever you do, make sure that your program is relevant to the audience that you're serving. And, we were having some issues with our elderly population with our meals. And I brought them in, and we talked about, the food, and, they gave me hell that day in the sense of the food and some of the problems. But the biggest problem that they had was that the provider was providing a meal that had chicken with the bone in the chicken. And they decided to serve a different type of meal without the bone. Well, I quickly told them that I want that chicken with the bone in because it's relevant to our elderly population, because that made them comfortable and safe. So from that experience, everything that we done was relevant to what our population wanted, what they needed. I think some of the key areas of success was being able to provide a meal on a consistent, regular pattern. And certainly it's something they wanted, but they got it and expected it every day. For 5 days, we were there with that meal. That meal opened the door to address other problems that existed in that environment. So taking that information, and staff was able to share with us the different types of needs, home repair, transportation. And so our whole focus and our plan and strategy was based around what our population needed. That laid, I think, the foundation of the elderly caregivers in Detroit trusting us and being able to say that, we are responsive to elderly population. Plus, I think our Senior Solution Radio program kept them informed of changing policies, information, how to get services. And so again, that voice, that presence was really a contributing factor. I think made us really was we want to, or we seek that organization. But again, I think that our relevancy is based on giving and providing the best professional help. And the key is as understand the dynamics of people and their perception. And the perception in some cases was Black folks can't do that. Black folks can't give good services to their population. And what we certainly redefine that in the sense not only do we have good service, we got superior services. And we're on top of what happened. And one of the one of the areas that I'm proud of is that we were primarily in home and community-based services. And I think Jennifer Granholm, who's in potential secretary, gave me a grant to get involved in nursing home. And the many years that I had been involved in aging, I didn't talk to nursing home because, again, they were our competitors. But I was able to do an assessment of nursing home, and I began to understand long-term care in the sense that the type of services that I was providing was only part of the solution that elderly people face in the sense of the continuum of living and dying. So I could be here all day, but I just wanted to share with you the foundation, the guts of this area agency in the sense that we were responsive, we opened new doors, new opportunities. We've had some wonderful people who supported me, and certainly I think the one thing that I look at, we got a lot of people engaged in long-term care and aging services in Detroit.
May I say something about Detroit and the advocacy movement that could be developed there? I strongly feel that the Detroit Area Agency could serve in a key leadership role particularly with African American men, because there's a great need for men who do not have opportunities for service, to find services. And I think, Paul, you and your partner really need to go back and think about starting the active chapters again. I don't know, it could be, doesn't have to be at the national level, it can now be at the local level, to have seminars and programs to encourage men to take care of their health in a better way. And so I think, I think there's a really need there, and I think that you could find a response in the Detroit Area Agency on Aging. I mean, I feel strongly about that. And I still have a letter from Jacqueline Jackson from back in 1972. So, I mean, I think there'd be money and funding. I still have those proposals. I never gave them away. So I'd be happy to send all that stuff to you, and you all can just take it, because Detroit had one of the most active caucus chapters, and Detroit and New York City had very active NCBA caucus chapters. So I want to encourage you all to move forward, and I'll help you in any way I can.
Ms. Penn Davis, that is so right on time and so much appreciated. And I just share with you as related to, it was just yesterday in which I was just, or maybe the day before, which I spoke with Mrs. Johnson. And yesterday I spoke with Paul and just spoke about the role that NCBA played in our lives and my life. So that's so well received, and it's something that we will follow up with you on, and to take you up on that, because we concur 100% with you. And as I sit here and as I've sat back and they've talked about the future, and I'm kind of reminded of what James Baldwin once said, that you have to understand from whence you come to understand where you're going. And a lot of the things in which we're going to be taking a look at as far as our future direction, it'd probably just be some of a variation of some of the activities in which have already occurred. I think about Dr. Stanford and what's occurred is related to some of his research, but his work around diversity and equity and inclusion. And that's definitely something in which we're going to move forward in. When I take a look as far as what NCBA and what the Area Office on Aging of Northwestern Ohio has done around housing and just addressing some of those that security as far as residency for individuals, that's something in which we will be taking a look at as we move forward. intergenerational activities and programs, senior proms, and just working to provide, share what I believe is the great strengths of our population and the morals and the values in which they can share with the younger generations, while the younger generations can share some of their skill sets and ideas. And we're going to be taking a look as far as what we can do around that. Advocacy will always and continue to be a strong point for us and something that we want to continue to do. And as Paul alluded to, especially with some of the data we have around dying before their times and some of the social and health inequalities in which we recognize. So we were going to continue to push that rock up the hill and kind of serve as that unifying entity to bring everyone together to address these things. And we're definitely going to continue to work around a great initiative, which Paul didn't speak about, but is what I feel is one of the cornerstones and one of the pillars of his legacy. And that was the creation of the community health and wellness centers. And as far as what they're doing around health promotion, there's some things in which I believe the network is being forced to move towards, and we're going to move in that direction in regards to how we could possibly get into integrated health and provide partnerships with other health systems or disciplines. And what our community wellness centers do, they actually really position us to provide a great role in that space. And we're just going to continue to serve as try to be the beacon of the light, try to be that voice for our constituents and for our community, and just to be just that advocate. So I am so excited and so thrilled as related to some of these conversations. And Ms. Penn Davis, when you started speaking about what your start and your role, and then to hear Mrs. Johnson kind of follow up on it, it actually started giving me chills as related to, just the conversation and what's taking place and what has occurred. But it also made me realize it's related to what is also before us. And Ms. Young, I think that you have you're coming in at the right time, and I'd like to see how we can work together and how we can do some things to help the next generation also.
I really kind of articulated very heavily the challenges of dying before their time, and it got to the point people would start calling me doom and gloom man, and so I had to change my discussion or give people a solution to what I found out, and that's why we began to really focus on the positive in their life and really kind of push wellness centers. I think I had a thing, live long, live well, because again, I just got tired of talking about dying and chronic illnesses. But one of the things that helped me, and it goes back to Dolores, as you talk about Hobart Jackson and some of the things that he wanted to launch. But one of the key figures that really brought and contributed to success of NCBA was Arthur Fleming. And Dr. Fleming support of NCBA is, and Dr. Fleming was appointed by President Eisenhower for Secretary of Health and Human Services. He was appointed by Nixon over the Civil Rights Division. A guy that really was there for us at the right time. And I think there are people out there who are in positions who could collaborate, continue to have that growth. Again, I keep going back to Dr. Stanford, is getting in the right room with the right people. Because again, one thing I learned, you can't do this by yourself.
As far as the role of NCBA and just the support and to piggyback on what you were speaking about, Ms. Penn Davis, and Ms. Johnson alluded to it earlier in the conversation. I recall when she took a risk on me because I was very much unpolished. but she,
We all.
but she really invested in me, and she allowed me to make mistakes and to grow. But what really stood out, and she referenced it earlier, is that when opportunities came, and the opportunity came to move to go to Florida, she said one thing to me that still with me. She said, "You would always have a home. Go out there and spread your wings. If you fail, you have a home. You can come back home." And that meant the world to me. It's related to just taking that chance. And so, there's a great affinity in which I have for a number of reasons, and that being one. But one of the other things in which I have a great affinity for is in regards to she's always stayed current. She's always stayed new. She's always stayed relevant and adaptability. So what I would like to do at this particular point in time is kind of, and I want to toss this out to everyone, but there's two questions in which I have. And the first question is, what do you all see as related to the future and what's out there, and where do we go as a network, and how do we adapt, and how do we continue to stay relevant? And the second question in which I have is in regards to what is the cause for your longevity and commitment and service to our population and to the senior community.
Detroit is home for me. I have loved Detroit all my life. And so, and it's just a wonderful city. But there are a lot of people who are hurting in Detroit. I mean, seniors are really hurting. And I would like to see, for one, I would like to see the area agency make connections with the Black church, particularly some of the Pentecostal churches. It's people that some of the seniors, they don't believe, they don't believe in agencies, government agencies, but they believe in their churches and community centers in the church and nutrition programs in the churches. So I think that's a key. And hey, why not start the chapters again? I mean, I don't know if NCBA still has chapters, but that was a network of seniors who will come together and meet, once a month to discuss what nutrition issues, health issues, issues with grandparents, and children that they just can't take care of. So I mean, there's so many issues, but I think if you could use the church as a focal point, in conjunction with the senior center, with the area agency on aging, you'd really be a long way ahead.
I think there's something I would call the 3 E's, and that is education, and education.
Right.
And I say that because if we don't really integrate all the things that we're talking about into our schools, and starting at the kindergarten level, in the late 70s, early 80s, we developed a curriculum for K through 6. And that was to bring aging into the elementary school levels, and working with the area agencies on aging, working with the various volunteer programs around the city. So I think if we really think about what that means building a foundation. So when those young people leave elementary school, they're already thinking about, what can I do in service to my grandparents, my great-grandparents,
Right.
etc. So I think that's one of the things that we can kind of drive and help grow.
So I do want to piggyback on Miss Davis's comment about being involved in the Black church. I myself am studying to be a Catholic theologian. And so don't leave us Catholics out too, because we have senior ministries, that are very active still, even during COVID. So yeah, I definitely agree about the church. I think as far as, what causes longevity in the service of seniors, I mean, I basically made an entire career out of loving my grandparents who are no longer here, but it is important for me to nurture that relationship still because it has literally shaped and changed my life. Also to Dr. Stanford's point of education, you know, there are some HBCUs with gerontology programs. I attended one at Bethune-Cookman University, but I think it's important to have the actual field of gerontology be in schools, not just an offshoot of nursing or, an offshoot of something else, but an actual focus of gerontology. I think that's important. And then as far as the future, with, promoting intergeneration activity and having gerontology be a focus of future careers, I think it's important to have people want to be advocates, even if they're not in the field. But, I think that COVID has also presented the opportunity of seeing what to do about ageism that is so prevalent. You know what I mean? Like it is a very big problem. And so I think that we have the opportunity to figure out how to have a whole entire paradigm shift around ageism. And so, and staying relevant, aging is always going to be relevant. There's everybody's going to get older. It's not going away. So how to deal with it best, and also be empathetic as to, okay,
That's right.
it's not just those people over there, but these are your parents and grandparents and aunts, uncles, so on and so forth. How would you want them to be treated? If you think it's okay to leave somebody soiled in a wheelchair in a hallway, I pray for you. So yeah, so there's opportunities for advocacy everywhere.
Very well said. Very well said. Mrs. Johnson.
Thank you. I certainly agree with everything that has been said. I really want to circle back, though, to this whole area of education and involving Black men and working with Black males, young males, to go into the field of aging. When Paul and I started, and some of the others, they didn't pay very much money in this field. So, we were servant leaders and they weren't expected to get paid a decent wage. But now, I have colleagues in the field of aging in Ohio that are making well over $250,000 a year, well over $250,000 a year.
Wow.
So the field has been upgraded, and we need to get more African American males and females in this field of aging, and let them know that it is a great career choice. And I just think that we start young. We should start young, and our HBCUs are prime targets for us to develop gerontology programs. Some of the major universities have, as Aisha said, have moved away, and they have multidisciplinary kinds of tracks. But aging is not going to go away, as was said. And if you live long enough, you're going to get old. And there are all kinds of issues and problems circled around that. So, but I want to leave you with a couple of future thoughts. One, what does success look like? We've got to have strong leaders in the field of aging. We've got to have leaders that are prepared, that are driven by data and information. And we've got to understand that partnerships are so important. We cannot do this by ourselves. There are lots of elected officials, congressional representatives, and we now have an administration that I think is favorable to us, that would help us in this field. So our ideas and our vision have to be driven by data, but we also have to implement new policies. And so don't shy away from that, and let's encourage young people to assist us in that direction. And then I just want to say that with the churches, the Catholic churches, Methodists, Lutherans, I've all linked up with all of them because they have money. They have deeper pockets than area agencies on aging. So I have connected with National Church Residences that's based in Ohio. They've helped me with all of my housing projects. They manage all 3 of our projects. And then I've connected with United Methodist Retirement Center because I really want to get a PACE program going. We've got to understand that people are living in these communities and they need a little bit of help. So PACE is a wonderful opportunity to supplement some of the other services and programs that we have through our area agency on aging.
Sam Simmons was a giant, he was a quiet giant. And Sam was born 15 miles from where I was born. And Sam was able to career when George Romney went to Washington, D.C.
Right.
He took Sam Woody, and many of the housing policies as it relates to affirmative action, Sam was involved in establishing those regulations. But as Billy talked about mentorship, Sam, didn't know Sam until I got involved with NCBA, but Sam would call me every other day. He took an affection on me in the sense of exposing me to the network, to public policies. He introduced me to Dr. Butler, Arthur Fleming. I mean, he spent the type of mentoring that I don't think anybody had, and it was over at least a 10, 15 relationship in the sense of helping me understand the dynamics of advocating and working the legislative route, working the social route, just the embracement. And I think your point in the sense of having, and going back to Dr. Stanford, in the sense of having that education, that seminar, that non-academic training, but yes, that mentoring, and identifying, what does the aging population, people in academic, people in social policies, administration, public work, what does it look like in that field? And again, I think if, and I had thought about it in the sense of a university or some entity that holds seminars and discussions for people to come and participate. I got distracted with other things, but there's nothing wrong for DAAA being the education apparatus to inform minorities on public policies and aging policies and servicing the minority population. I think it's doable.
Yes.
Can I make a quick comment? It's really important to realize that the education and training that was sponsored by the Administration on Aging first was implemented at the state level and at the local levels. It wasn't until later that it spread to the colleges and universities. So the foundation for training and education in aging is at the local level.
I didn't know you were at jury duty at Administration on Aging.
Oh yeah, I was at the Administration on Aging from late 67 through 72.
Oh.
And Hobart and Jack and all of them came through the Administration on Aging. I worked with them to work with the programs that they were trying to implement.
See, that's the bit of history that young folks don't know. And the
Right.
presence of sharing that information is important, because again, I think when they see AAAs, they think about the insurance company, not the agent.
Right.
Right.
Oh gosh.
I think Dolores Davis pointed this out earlier in this conversation. We really got to write our history, because there's so much rich history with Blacks in the field of gerontology throughout, the 60s, the 70s, and the 80s. And we need to document that, because
We do. We really do.
Yes, once we pass away, I mean, that's lost forever.
Right. I agree wholeheartedly.
Well, not just that, but if you're in a place like I am, like I'm in Colorado, so I'm very isolated from,
Oh,
what I feel is going on elsewhere with the aging African American population. And so even just to be on a panel with you all is exciting to me, because I'm like, oh my goodness, there are people like me out there on my computer screen. And so, yeah, it is definitely very necessary. And if I hadn't sought the particular endeavors that I did in purposely trying to reach out to people, I would have no clue at all. So it's very necessary.
Well, you have my number and my email. Feel free.
All right.
Well,
Reconnect.
I think Ron Taylor has some ideas, and I've listened to them as to how DAAA could be the catalyst for bringing us together, and then certainly with everybody who's here on this panel today could serve as your support team, Ron, as you reach out. And there's so many others like us out there that are probably feeling the same way. They're not connected. They need to be connected, and they need to know that they've got support of others, people who look like them.
That's a challenge in which we accept, and we will gladly move on. And that's something I think is very much necessary. And it's and again, I just can't say enough, because I'm a prime example of that. And we got the information and the expertise that's here. Let's take advantage of it, and also let's pave the way for the next generation. With that, I'd just like to say thank you to each and every one of you for taking time out of your busy schedules to have this very important dialogue, very important conversation. When the conversation started, it really brought chills to me as related to, just what has occurred, what the pathway that has been laid, and what also, again, what we need to continue to do. And so with that, I'd just like to say thank you for your service to the network. Thank you for all that you continue to do. And please answer your phone when I call.
This concludes our program. Thank you for watching. For those interested in learning more about the Detroit Area Agency on Aging, please visit our website, DetroitSeniorSolution.org.